Hello, I'm Walking the Cow, and today in this video I'm going to go through some of my favourite cult 80s horror films. And not only that, but I'm going to go through them from 1980 all the way up to 1989, choosing one film from each year. And to make it a little bit more challenging, I'm just going to go with things that I own. So in a way, I'm a tiny little bit limited, but in another way, it's a really good excuse for me to talk about some of the films that I like a lot. And if you like the look of any of these, just let me know in the comments below, or just go and check a trailer out. But yeah, do let me know which ones that you've seen out of these, and let me know which ones you're interested in. So without further ado, let's get straight on with it. I'm going to start in 1980, and I'm going to go with The House at the Edge of the Park. And so this was famously a rip-off of The Last House on the Left, and you can sort of tell by the title. The big difference, I suppose, is that House at the Edge of the Park is a home invasion film. It follows two garage mechanics, and after a brief meeting with these two upper-class snobs, they decide to follow them home, and follow them home to this luxury villa, and they gatecrash the party, and they hold everyone in the house captive, and they make them do all sorts of crazy shit. And it's funny that they got David Hess from Last House to play the main villain, considering how much this film already owes to that film. And David Hess plays a good solid part in this, even if he's exactly like his character Krug in Last House, but he's still pretty damn terrifying. But for me with this film, it's more about Giovanni Radici. He plays a great part too as Ricky, who's this kind of childish and slow-minded sort of sidekick. And Radici is great in everything, and he's great in everything I've seen him in, and this is probably my favourite of his. And I think it's one of the films he actually enjoyed being in too, unlike Cannibal Ferox. 1981, and I'm going to go with The Black Cat. This is based on the story of the same name by Edgar Allan Poe, and there's a handful of films with the same name based on the exact same story. This is the only one that I've seen though. It was directed by Lucio Fulci, one of the best, greatest Italian filmmakers. Someone that I like a great deal. In fact, there's another two of his films coming up in this list. So this is about an old scientist. It's played by Patrick McGee, and he can use his mind to make his cat do things, mainly getting revenge on people who screw him over. It's a little bit cheesy, but it's funny to see Patrick McGee in this, because I'm so used to seeing him in A Clockwork Orange. You'll remember the bit with I'm singing in the rain, but yeah, I'm not sure how many other films I've seen with him, with Patrick McGee in, that weren't made by Stanley Kubrick, but he's really good in this. He's a really talented actor, and it's a great film overall. It's just a little bit cheesy in places, but it's still worth a watch. 1982, and I'm going to go with Unhinged. And no, it's not the Russell Crowe film. I think, did that come out this year or last year or something? No, this is Unhinged from 1982, and it's really hard to describe this film without spoiling anything. What I will say is that I think this film kind of relies on, and it's kind of more, I think it's remembered by most people for a twist. I'm not going to say what the twist is. I believe it's three teenage girls. I think their car breaks down. They end up stranded in the middle of nowhere, and they find this house with this family. Everything seems normal, I suppose. But then they're kind of stuck there, and the family's really, really strange, especially the young daughter. There's something very strange about her. I don't want to spoil anything. But yeah, so the three girls are kind of trapped there, and it's your typical thing. It's slow starting, but it's got all these telltale signs that something's going to go wrong, and the phone, they need to use the phone so they can ring the parents and stuff, but typically the phone line's down. There's nowhere around for miles, I think, that they can go to, and yeah, so they're just stuck with this really odd family, and the mother and the young daughter are just very strange, and it's one that I can't really say anything about, because the entire point of the film is that it's based on the twist at the end. Next up, 1983, and I feel a little bit bad about calling this a cult. 80s film, because I'm not sure whether it really is, but I'm going to go with it anyway because I like it a lot. It's Kuja from 1983, and obviously it's based on a novel by Stephen King. It's directed by the same guy who directed Navy SEALs as well, if anybody's seen that, or if anybody's seen Clerks, where they joke about it. So yeah, Kuja is one of these films that it took me a while to get around to actually seeing. I think I saw it maybe 5 or 6 years ago. Borrowed it from somebody, and I kind of knew of it, but I never really... I don't know why I didn't get around to it sooner, basically. Because when I did watch it, I really enjoyed it. It's about a killer dog. I think it gets bit by a rat, or it gets bit by a bat. I think it's been a while since I saw it, and it gets infected with rabies. And there's some good bits that make you jump. There were a bit where it depends on how squeamish you are. I'm not really squeamish, and there's not a lot of films that I can't watch while I'm eating at the same time. But there's a bit with the car in this, if anybody knows the bit I'm talking about. Kuja's like smashing against the side of the frigging car. And there's bits of skin and shit, and it was just disgusting. I don't know what I was eating, but I had to put my food down for a bit, because it was just real. I can't describe it. It was just really disgusting, and I'm really not like that with most things. I can watch anything and, gladly tuck into a frigging burger or whatever. But this kind of turned my stomach, and I don't know why. I can't think of many other films that have turned my stomach the way that this did. 1984, and I'm going to go with Combat Shock. This were a film that I believe were put out by Troma. In fact, I know it were put out by Troma. It's a really dark, depressing, just downright bleak. It's one of the most bleakest films I've ever seen. It's really effective though. Anyone who's seen it, there's that bit at the end. It's really fucking nasty, and I mean nasty. I'm not going to spoil that, but the bit at the end kind of caught me off guard a little bit. But yeah, it's about a guy who's he's a Vietnam veteran, and he's addicted to heroin. He's got a pregnant wife, and it's just, they got no money. They're living in absolute squalor. He's having to go out every day to get heroin. The best way I can describe this is it's like a cross between Eraserhead and maybe Train Spotting. It's one of those films where there's just no happiness in it. There's nothing in this film that kind of makes you laugh. Think of some other Troma stuff like Toxic Avenger but it's worth a watch if you want to see something that is really nasty. And for 1985, I'm going to go with this little beauty. This is Slaughter High. It's one of my favourite slashers. It's not my favourite one. I think my favourite slasher is probably, I don't know, either Texas Chainsaw or maybe The Burning. But this is really good. It starts off a little bit similar to Toxic Avenger. You got this guy, he's in school and he's getting bullied a lot. He's usually the butt of all the jokes. One day he's in the science lab and the other kids pull a prank on him, and it leaves him horribly disfigured, left for dead basically, rushed to hospital. And then so many years later, all the kids that went to that school get an invitation to a reunion, and they turn up at their old school, and things just don't go well. I'm not going to spoil anything. This is actually, they're all using American accents, but all the people in this, I believe, were British actors. Somebody pointed out to me that one of the actors is somebody from Emmerdale or EastEnders or something. When I've finished doing this video, I'll look up, exactly who it is, and I'll put it up on the screen now, just so people know who I'm talking about. So yeah, I honestly didn't even realise the first time I watched it that they were using really fake American accents. But this is a really good film. Completely different to Combat Shock. This film's really funny. Next up, 1986, and I've got no choice. I'm going to have to go with this. This is by far my favourite film in this entire video. It's my favourite film on this list. It's a film called Trick or Treat. I know there's another film called Trick or Treat. This is a completely different thing. This is the 1986 Trick or Treat, and it's brilliant. It's got Ozzy Osbourne as a priest. It's got Gene Simmons. Bloody loved this when I was younger. This is one of the films that my dad had that I really took to. And it's got a really good heavy metal soundtrack as well. I can't remember who the band are now. is it Winger or some, not Winger, someone like that. But yeah, so what's it about? Trick or Treat, it follows this high school metalhead. Calls himself Ragman. He's obsessed with this rock star heavy metal musician called Sammy Kerr. And one day, in a horrific, there's a hotel fire. Now this is right at the beginning of the film, by the way. There's a hotel fire and it kills Sammy Kerr with this like metal rock legend. A few days later, obviously the Ragman is absolutely devastated. Gene Simmons, who's the local radio host, gives him an unreleased demo of Sammy Kerr's, and yeah, he plays the record backwards and summons Sammy Kerr, and I won't say anything else. It's a really, really good film. 1987, and I'm going to go with Enigma. This is another film by Lucio Fulci. In fact, he wrote at least a little bit of the screenplay to this, but obviously he directed it. He also appeared in it as well for a brief little moment. He plays a detective, I think, or a constable or something. And typical of Fulci, I mean, he were really good with what he did, but sometimes you can't ignore the fact, and everybody will tell you this, that sometimes he just tried to rip off other films. He did this with, well, instead of just listing them all, I'll just go on about this one. So it's about a girl who's in a coma in this like boarding school for, I think it's just for young girls. And she kind of, although she's in a coma, she kind of possesses one of these new group of girls that comes to the boarding school. And yeah, it's really crazy. There's a little bit of like poltergeist in this. There's a little bit of Carrie, maybe a little bit of The Exorcist. It's kind of a mashup of lots of little things. I think mostly I'd say Suspiria, you know, the Argento film. Yeah, it reminded me mostly of Suspiria, so I guess if you like Suspiria and you want to see something that's sort of like that but just a little bit crazier and a little bit nonsensical, then Enigma's really good. And it's not one of Fulci's best films. It doesn't really get reviewed that well because, like I said, it's really obvious what he was trying to do. His influences in this are just blatantly obvious. You think of like Zombie Flesh Eaters, when it were, you know, were really influenced by Dawn of the Dead to do something like that. 1988, and I'm going to go with Pin, and I'm going to have a really hard job trying to explain this film away. So I'm going to try and do my best. Pin is a story about a young boy whose dad is a doctor. In his dad's doctor's surgery, there's this kind of like top half of a mannequin. It's like those things you see in doctor's offices where it shows you where the heart is and the lungs and the liver and what have you. And the young boy goes to his dad's doctor's surgery and talks to this thing, and he calls it Pin. But the thing is, his dad talks to it as well, and his sister does. And whenever they need guidance, they seem to always turn to this thing called Pin. I'll just put a screenshot up so because it's hard for me to describe what the fuck Pin actually is. But yeah, this is a really good film. It's got some really black, dark comedy bits in it, especially some little sexual jokes or some little things that it kind of implies. But it's a really bizarre film, and the thing is, it follows the kids as they grow up. And when the young boy is like a teenager, he hasn't grown out of it, and he's still going back to the office and talking to this fucking weird thing called Pin. And the entire of the film, you're not really sure whether Pin is talking back to him or whether he's just imagining it. But then, because his sister talks to Pin as well, and yeah, it makes it even weirder because the dad gets really strict with the kids when they're younger and starts banning them from, you know, going to talk to Pin. And yeah, it's a really, really bizarre film. I think I might have talked about this when I picked it up, or at least I've mentioned it in a video before. It's another one of those where I'm just going to have to link to a trailer below. This was very hard for me to find on DVD when I was looking for it. I don't know what it sells for, and I'm not sure how common it is. I went around video shops, DVD shops, asking about this, and you can imagine look on the face when they're trying to I'm trying to explain to them what this film's about. I must have sounded like a right idiot. But yeah, go check the trailer out. It's a really weird film. It's really weird, that's all I can say. And last but not least, 1989, I'm going to go with another film by Lucio Fulci. And this is one of those that were just made for Italian TV. You can get this on DVD though, and it's really, really cheap. Now, I know some people that have seen this and just turned it off. I know people that like Fulci and really don't like this film at all. It's usually when people rank his films, it's down at the bottom as far as his horror goes. But I don't mind it. I really enjoyed it. The thing is with this, it's all over the place. It switches between different time periods. And with Fulci's films, usually you can just sit back and enjoy the gore, or you can, the creepy stories or what have you. With this one, I find that you've really got to kind of take note of what's happening. You got to concentrate a lot more than you usually would watching one of his films. It's about these two guys that break into this house to rob it. And in the house, you got this old couple, and the guys who break into the house end up trapped in the house. And this old couple they use clocks, and what they can do is change the time back in the house, and so they keep going between all these different time periods. And obviously, the guys that broke into the house don't know what the hell's going on. It's pretty trippy, but I'm sure there's a bit towards the end that I really liked a lot. I'm not going to mention that. But there is a bit later on I like. There is like a little bit of kind of gore. And the little special effects and stuff that are in this are worth watching it for as well. But again, this is one that I really wouldn't recommend. If you like Fulci's films a lot and you haven't seen this, then I'd say check it out just so you can make your own mind up. And that brings us to the end. I hope you enjoyed that. I've been going through the cult films of the 1980s by each year. And if this goes down well, or even if it doesn't, I might do the same with the 70s. I've already got a list of what I'd like to talk about. As usual, let me know below if you enjoyed this. Let me know which of the films you've seen, or which of the ones you're interested in seeing. I've been Walking the Cow. Thank you for watching, and bye for now. I'll see you next time.